we have the United Nations. Could you tell us what's the difference between the United Nations and your organization?
The United Nations has many well-intentioned people working for it, but the United Nations Charter, as opposed to the people who work for UNICEF and so on, the United Nations Charter is a treaty of sovereign nations. It is not a government. Right? It has no governmental authority. It's a treaty of sovereign nations, and when these sovereign nations make more treaties, sub-treaties, they call it international law, which is unenforceable and undemocratic. The United Nations is not a democratic organization and is not a government. Therefore, what they're doing does not really represent the people of Earth at all.
Why would you say it's not democratic?
The structure of the UN is that it has a General Assembly, right, with one representative from every country in the world. Therefore, a tiny country with 2 million people has one representative, and the largest countries in the world, China and India, with 1 billion people, have one representative, right? So these representatives are not, there's no democracy there. Secondly, the General Assembly has no authority. Even if everybody in the General Assembly votes for some proposition, right? Say there's 187 yes votes and 2 no votes, right? That has no effect at all, because the proposition has to go to the UN Security Council, which has 15 members on it, 5 of whom are permanent members. Each of those 5 members have a veto, and any of those 5 members can veto anything the General Assembly decides on, even if it's unanimous. So it's an ineffective organization, it's undemocratic, and it really was set up. Remember, it was set up by the victors in the Second World War. Who were the victors? The 5 permanent members of the Security Council that have a veto over everything. So it's really a dictatorship of those victors in the Second World War.
How would yours be, how would each country be represented in your structure?
Under the Earth Constitution, there is a World Parliament. And the World Parliament has 3 houses to it. And one house is the House of Nations, right? And so every country would send a representative to the House of Nations. The Constitution specifies 1 representative, 2 or 3, depending on the population. So small countries would have 1, large countries like the United States would have 3 representatives. Then it has a House of Peoples. So the entire population of the Earth is divided into 1,000 electoral districts, and each of those elects 1 representative to the House of Peoples, right? And then there's a third house, which is a unique and wonderful feature of this Constitution, the House of Councillors. There would be 20 administrative regions in the world, and each of those administrative regions will send 10 members to the House of Councillors. And the idea is that these councillors will represent not individual districts, not nations, but the people of Earth itself. They'll represent the whole, with wisdom and in knowledge and expertise about all the world problems that the World Parliament will have to deal with.
How would you finance all of these infrastructures?
It's a good question, and it requires a very simple understanding that the finances of the world today are predicated on money created as debt, right? The Federal Reserve of the United States, for example, is a consortium of private banks, and when the United States needs money, it goes to those private banks with treasury notes and gets money in return, and it becomes debt for the people of the United States, right? Same with the euro in Europe and so on. No government in the world needs to create money as debt. Governments have the power to create money. It says that in the U.S. Constitution. You know, the U.S. government has power to create money. If it wanted to, they could just create money. And that's what the world government will do. Money represents the goods and services that people produce and represent and work with in the world. So the people of Earth are working, they're producing wealth through their goods and services. Money is a medium of exchange for those things. And the Earth currency will represent that, and the Earth government will have the power simply to create money to serve human needs.
Could it create a depression if you publish too much money? Or
I don't think so, because the money has to be dispersed in intelligent ways. Of course, there are whole administrations of people who do this in government, right? And they decide how the money is going to be allocated and dispersed, and think of the question, Ricaardoe. The money right now, there's trillions of dollars every day exchanged in the world, right? And yet, half the world is in poverty, and a third of the world goes to bed hungry every night, right? And then they say, well, if there's too much money, we're going to have a depression, right? They'll have a glut and so on. But what about all the human needs that are not satisfied, right? The Earth government will be directed, it says it right in the Constitution, directed toward the satisfaction of human needs, lifting human beings out of poverty, protecting human rights, creating a decent planet for everybody on Earth.